My name is Ashley Withers. I'm a college counselor. I'm with my wonderful colleague, Ana Maria Vaccaro, and we have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful representative, Mr. Koff from Dartmouth University, who is going to be talking to us about financial aid.
So Dino Koff, who's the director of financial aid, all the way from Dartmouth College. Yes, Dartmouth College is an education of no other. Dino has worked there as financial aid for over 30 years, right? And still strong and so young with all his luscious hair that's on there as well. He's also done financial aid with financial aid both for the law school and medical school too. So he knows financial aid inside and out. But what I love about Dino is that he is committed to making sure students gain access to education and that family knows that college is affordable, because he knows that education makes a strong impact in our society more than ever today. So we start whenever you're ready. And Dino, welcome to SI on Zoom.
Wonderful. I'm going to share my screen here, and in 1 second. I'm really excited to be able to talk tonight, and welcome. I'm talking to you tonight from my basement in Quechee, Vermont, which is right over the border from Hanover, New Hampshire, where Dartmouth College is. And I said the last time I spoke virtually to this wonderful group, that I want to do it in person the next time. So now I'm saying this again, that this is wonderful that we're able to do this, but I love San Francisco. So I'm hoping that we are, everybody's healthy and we're able to do this in person in the future. So I titled this just Financial Aid 101, and it's just to sort of demystify, give a lot of information for, some resources for you, maybe a little homework. And bottom line is this can be a complex process. People get nervous by it. There's a lot of anxiety. And the goal is just to give you as much information so that you can plan, you can prepare, you can ask the questions, you can start looking at different schools and seeing, can this be affordable for me? And we're going to talk about some tips and, as I said, resources to make this a little bit easier. I have some pictures that I've put into the presentation just because I think they're really cool. This is our green on campus. Usually the pictures have nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about, but they're just fun pictures of the campus in the Upper Valley of Vermont and New Hampshire. So I have 2 daughters, both in college, and so one loves ABBA and the group ABBA and the song Money, Money, Money. So I put that in there for her, but we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about resources, homework, and answer a whole heck of a lot of questions if we can do that. So to start off, though, we're going to say, how does a student pay for college? And the bottom line is, if I was meeting with a group of students, I would stand in front of them and I would say, tell me, how are you going to pay for college? And whether you're, and I've done this with middle schoolers, I've done this with high schoolers. And so if I said, how are you going to pay for college? And people would shout some things out. And obviously we're not going to do that right now, being virtual, but how are we going to pay? People would say scholarships and grants. They would talk about those scholarships and grants. I would break it down even further. And I would say, this is wonderful, a scholarship or grant. What is it based on? And some people would start shouting out different things, merit-based or need-based. And merit-based and need-based are essentially two different criteria that scholarships are given out for. Merit-based is a talent, it's an ability. It could be academic, it may be a really strong GPA, strong standardized testing. It might be leadership. It might be extracurricular activities. It could be athletics. It may be I'm a great soccer player. It could be that I'm wonderful a clarinetist, or I'm in the arts and I excel. And that's all merit. It's talent, it's ability, and the schools are giving, some schools are giving money for your talents and your ability. Other schools are giving money that are based on need. And at Dartmouth and all of our Ivy League all of the Ivy League schools, our peers, we're giving need-based aid, which means we're giving financial aid based on financial numbers. So your SATs, your ACTs, and your GPA, and those extracurriculars that we just spoke about, all of that is so important, but that's important for admissions. For schools that give out money for need-based aid, what we're going to be looking at is your financials. We're going to be looking at tax returns and the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, maybe the profile form. And so we're going to ask for different forms that are going to give us essentially a peek into your financials. And we're going to give out money to students who need the money the most. And it's going to be based on your financial need. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. When we talk about how does a student pay for college, we may talk about work study, a job. This is what I always talk about is when students have a chance to work when they're in college, this is for the 2 a.m. pizza, or this is for the movies, or this is for fun. This is because the bank of mom and dad might be closed. And this job is always great to help pay for different expenses. Maybe it's to help with textbooks or things, computer. So it's a job on campus, maybe 8 to 10 hours a week. So that's one way that students are able to pay for their expenses. Scholarships, work study. These are things that if you do the work, you don't have to repay it. The scholarships and grants, you don't have to repay. I'm highlighting that because the next thing we're going to talk about is loans. And, you know, loans are available for students. Loans are available for parents. Loans are available from sometimes from different sources, which we're going to talk about. And know that loans are there as an option. And it may be an insurance piece where later on we're going to talk about how to pay. And this is just one piece of the pie to help finance your education. Another one we talk about is savings. And so you may say, okay, we can do this and we can help from, we have some savings for this. You may not, but again, it's just taking a piece of pie from a piece of money, maybe from all these categories. I always laugh and I try to throw in Powerball. I've never done it where there's a $600 million Powerball that's actually out there. Unfortunately, you have to play to win. So you may not win. If you do win the 600 million, we'll put, for half of that, we'll put a name, your name on a building. So think about that as a donation. I'm sure St. Ignatius would be very excited for a donation also, but you may not need financial aid if you win Powerball. Okay, where does the money come from? And this is a really important piece because now the students in the past would tell me how they're going to pay. And now where does the money come from? So the federal government. You may be eligible for some need-based grants from the federal government. You may be eligible for loans from the federal government. The state government, California is a perfect example of a state government that has funding. All states are different, but California definitely does have some funding. And schools. And that's really important because that's what I get to do. I have a great team and we're giving out this year $120 million in scholarships, money that doesn't have to be repaid. And so we're also giving out loans. And ours are low interest loans that are subsidized by Dartmouth, which means interest isn't accruing while you're in school. And so every school is different. Most schools will be giving out some types of scholarships or grants, hopefully. Some give out loans, some give out, some are able to give out a job for work. At Dartmouth, we're giving out the jobs, loans, and possibly loans, and then scholarships. And the other one I want to highlight as where does money come from are community resources. And I say this because there may be money out there, and I think of, when we say community resources, religious organizations, service groups. Many times people have heard of the big outside scholarships, and you may hear about Jack Can't Cook, or different, the Coca-Cola scholarship, Johnson & Johnson scholarship. And so that's at the national level. But there's different community resources that are available that are in San Francisco. And it's, where do you find those? Sometimes those are the toughest things to do, is figuring out where those come from. But I always say religious organizations, I always say to take a look at service, whether it's a Rotary Club, Lions, things like that, have different organizations, and a Google search, believe it or not, just going on the computer search engine and typing in outside college scholarships or outside scholarships and putting in zip codes, or it's just trying to narrow things down. But all of these are essentially the pots of money. Where does that money comes from? So I mentioned at Dartmouth that we're a need-based financial aid. We're also need-blind in admissions. So let me just explain what that is real quick. Need-blind admissions, not every school is need-blind, which means at Dartmouth, we're not going to look at your family financials during the admissions process. So we're not looking at your ability to pay. And we're funding everybody who gets in. Not all schools are able to do that. So we meet 100% of demonstrated need. And what does that mean? If we admit our class, and I told you earlier, my budget is 120 million, and we spend 124 million, we need to find the $4 million we're on the hook for, because we're meeting all students' financial need. Not every school can do that. So it's important to take a look at different schools and the policies. If a school is, the opposite of need blind is need aware. If you need financial aid to attend a school, if you need financial aid, you need to apply for financial aid before or when you submit your admissions application. And that's really important to know and to start researching, because many times if you're a need aware school, they're looking at family finances. And you may say, but if I have a less of a chance of getting in, I don't want to apply for financial aid. But it's really important at a need aware school, if you really truly need financial aid to go to that school, one of the worst things ever is getting admitted to a school and not being able to qualify for financial aid because you didn't apply in time. So I encourage you to start, and we'll talk about homework in a little bit, but that's the big thing between need blind and need aware, is your family financials within the admissions process. So
we had a question out there talking about families financials. Since our families from the Bay Area, San Francisco being the most expensive city, and our dollar signs seem big if you're from Kentucky, but not big if you're in San Francisco. So can you address how colleges in different regions of the country will look at a family who lives in San Francisco who's probably struggling a lot more than someone else has that same value house and same salary somewhere else?
I think that's a really good question, and there are definitely parts of the country that this gets brought up in more frequently. Not all schools will have this, but we will have a COLA, cost of living adjustment. We know that it is more expensive, obviously, in San Francisco, and this 3-bedroom house that we have, if we moved it to San Francisco, we would never, ever, ever be able to afford it. So, but we understand that salaries need to be higher, that homes are higher, and we definitely have cost of living adjustments looking at different places all over the country, essentially, because if you're in Hawaii, the cost is going to be higher. Washington, D.C., the cost is going to be higher. Just, we understand that. Now, it may not be perfect, you may, but we're definitely making allowances, knowing that it is more expensive to live in San Francisco than it is in other places across the country. So when you fill out different forms, when including your admissions application, obviously it's going to say where you are, and based on that, our computer system is using a cost of living adjustment to help normalize and make things more standard across the board, so that that helps in the needs analysis formulas. So that's a great question. So I want to talk about here the process. Most schools will be requiring the free application for federal student aid. And then many of the selective need-based schools will be requiring the CSS profile. And the CSS profile is a College Board form that goes a little bit more in depth than the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And you'll be filling these out. The databases, just so you know, they all open October 1 for, so if you're a senior next year, so if you're a junior now and listening to this, in your senior years next year, you're applying to colleges, October 1, the databases open up for you to apply for financial aid. And that's really important, because you don't want to wait till you're accepted at schools, because some schools, as I said earlier, want your financial aid. If you're applying, they want your forms ahead of time. Others, like us, we release our financial aid at the exact same time of admissions. So we want to be able to give you that information. You just got admitted. That's wonderful and exciting. And hopefully the financial aid is coming with it so that you can stay excited. So each school will have a process. For us, it's a couple of forms. It's tax returns, and it's important that you start looking on websites at different schools' forms. So on the you see the graphic My Intuition, everybody. That is a new calculator. It's not new anymore. It's about 5 years old for us, but more and more schools are using this My Intuition quick college cost estimator, and it takes 3 minutes and 47 seconds to fill out. It is that easy. And you're going to put, it's in English, it's in Spanish, you're going to put your information in 7 questions, and it's going to come out with an estimate for you. And with that estimate is, we'll have your parent contribution, it will have scholarships, it will have work. If you're awarded a loan, it will have a loan possibly in there for you. So it's a great way if you're sitting there saying, okay, can I really afford this? And I want to say there's over 70 colleges now using My Intuition. It is rapidly growing, which is wonderful. And it's an estimate. It's 7 questions, but it's pretty close. And I say, well, pretty close. And but there's also on all colleges' websites, and this is really important, all colleges that accept federal money need to have a calculator on their website called a net price calculator. And the net price calculator is a little bit more in depth than the My Intuition. It's going to take you 20 minutes, 25 minutes to fill out with your tax return in front of you. And you're going to fill that out. And for us at Dartmouth, if you fill it out correctly, that's our actual formula. So if you're really interested to see if you're going to qualify for aid, type your information into the net price calculator. And again, all schools have the net price calculator that accept federal funds. So I encourage you to check out different schools that you're looking at. This is a great time to start doing the research if you're in your sophomore year or your junior year. Perfect timing, because you're not writing applications yet, but you're doing some research. I want to highlight for us, I was putting this together, and I just realized I picked a slide that from an older presentation, but we do meet 100% of demonstrated need. We do have free tuition for scholarships that cover tuition for all students from families with typical assets and incomes less than 100,000. No income cutoffs, it's all formula. And if you have two people in college, you're going to have two tuition bills, but you may qualify for more aid because the formula takes into account that you have two people in college. You see average scholarship. This is the part that for some reason I picked one that's 2 years old. This year is $56,000 is our average scholarship. We get really excited about that. And as I told you, we're going to have over $120 million in aid this year.
Dino, since you know, a lot of families, and there's a question that came up, are concerned because they hear in the news that colleges and universities, and I think Dartmouth wasn't immune either, lost millions of dollars during COVID-19. And we shared a link on the Q&A of a list of schools based on 2019-2020 who meet full need. What have you heard from fellow financial aid directors about the impact of COVID-19 who have historically met full need, but now what does that mean out there? Like, you know, what should families kind of emotionally be prepared for, knowing that colleges got stung by this pandemic as well in various ways?
You know, I think no industry has been immune, and I say that because from this pandemic, because we see families with job loss, and we see with job loss, with health issues, with family members passing away, and it's been nonstop for us since early March. And I think that's a really good question, is like, what does it mean? For us at Dartmouth, we're meeting full need, and we continue to family financial situations are not stable right now. And for us, we've gone out and we have a initiative right now to raise an extra $8 million this year, because we're giving out a lot more in financial aid. You know, we are very lucky. Our alums are incredible. Our campus supporters and friends are awesome. And everybody is stepping up, knowing that we have students that are really hurting. And across the country, this is happening at many schools. And the schools that meet full need, the goal is that this is a sustainable endeavor through the good and the bad. And I know many schools are doing what we're doing and trying to fundraise more to continue to meet full need. And it will be very public on websites if schools meet and continue to meet demonstrated need. And in a little bit, I'm going to talk about how we're handling the COVID crisis and how many peer schools are also in terms of, you know, when you're filing for the class of 25. So if you were a senior, you're using 2019 tax returns. But 2019 seems like 10 years ago at this point, just because there's been so much going on. And I say that because we're able to look at current year or estimated year, and all of the schools are able to do this. And it's working with the colleges that you're going to be looking at and calling them or going online and saying, is financial aid changing? And again, that's part of your homework now, because you have time to do it if you're an underclass person. In terms of if you're a junior and you're listening to this, I would reach out to schools and say, how has COVID impacted? And you know, for Dartmouth, we've been very public. It's a very large loss. I think I saw $91 million is what we're expected to lose. But you know, financial aid has been and is something that we, the trustees, the administration, our alums, this is a priority. And so you can talk to schools about it. And I think that's part of your homework now. It's, again, awesome question.
And then follow up with the net price calculator. So if a family did it, how would they know what the situation would be as a question on Q&A? So again, families, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section versus raising your hand. We greatly appreciate it. How is it calculated when you have multiple children starting to attend at the same time, right? So could you address that?
I sure can. So essentially, when you're doing the calculator, it is a good news, bad news situation. And when I say it's good news, it's good news. The formulas take into account if you have, it takes into account family size. So if you have a family of 4 and you're going to have 2 in college at once, the formula is going to be essentially friendlier to a family that has 2 people in college at once. That's the good news. The bad news is you're going to get 2 tuition bills at once. So it is what I say a good news, bad news. You will get at many schools you'll get more aid. Like at a school that gives only merit aid out, it's possible you won't get more because remember they're not looking at that information. They're not looking at your financials. They're not seeing how many people are going to be in school at once. Whereas a need-based school will be looking at how many students will be enrolled at one time. And you can do that right on the calculators. On the My Intuition, which is the estimator, it's the 3 minutes and 47 seconds, that has a question at the end, how many people are going to be in college. And the net price calculators will all have that question. Awesome. All right, let's talk about process real quick. I mentioned this earlier. So you see the Cal Dream Act form. And if you're not eligible for the FAFSA, for Dartmouth, we wouldn't have the Cal Dream Act form, but in California, you definitely would. The CSS profile, there are waivers for the CSS profile for students who are lower income. Because there is a fee for that. We'll look at your federal taxes. If you're going to be in the class of 26, so, oh my gosh, that's incredible. So we're recruiting now for the class of 25. We just admitted through early decision our class of 25. So this year for the class of 25, we're looking at 2019 taxes. Next year, so if you're a junior and you're applying to colleges, we'll be using your 2020 taxes. Let me tell you why I'm highlighting that now. I'm highlighting that because your taxes are done come April, hopefully. And if your taxes are done, you can go on to all of these calculators knowing that your taxes are done. You're typing in that information that you already know about. So that's going to really help you get a good, strong estimate of what it's going to cost to go to college. And that's important to know. And it used to be that we were using taxes from prior years. So you would be going to college in September and you would be finishing your taxes in April and we would be using those taxes. It's really difficult to estimate. I think 5 years ago that was changed so that what is called prior is being used, prior year. So we're using in the cycle 2 years. It's a little complicated, but just know that if you're a junior sitting here, we're going to use your 2020 taxes. If you're a sophomore sitting here and you go straight through to college, we'll be using your 2021 taxes. So really good stuff. And then most schools will have an institutional form for you to fill out. One thing I want to also highlight is many times we'll have parents, a divorced family, and the impact of divorced parents on the financial aid process. So the free application for federal student aid is only going to look at the parent that is essentially the custodial parent, the parent that's giving essentially 50.1% or more resource to the student. So it's only going to look at one parent information. One parent will fill that out, again, the custodial parent, and submit that form. For most need-based schools and selective need-based schools, we're going to look at both parents. And if parents are remarried, we break out parents. We'll never look at if we have two parents and both of them, and they're divorced and both are remarried, we'll never look at four adults are working, we'll never look at four incomes. We'll always break out the divorced parents first, and we'll try to break out the step parents so that we're just looking at that point at the divorced parents. And not all situations that can work. And know that schools will work with you if you have situations that are tricky. Your job is to communicate with the schools to talk about process. And there's plenty of spots to communicate with us, obviously over a phone and email. Right now, we are Zooming machines with families, so even over Zoom, but also on the forums, you can type in paragraphs at a time and tell us about different situations that may impact you from having both sets of parents filling out the forms. So know that you'll want to communicate with schools if that's you. But on the federal side, we're looking at one parent. On the most, again, need-based schools, we'll be looking at both sets of parents. Okay, we've got a team here, everybody. The role of financial aid. We are financing education together. We have parents that hopefully are going to be involved. We have the student. We have the federal aid if you qualify, so the government. And you have institutional aid, which is Dartmouth or any school that you're going to be looking at. Hopefully, you have a chance of qualifying. So this is really a team effort, and we're all on the team. Our job is access. That is, when you're admitted and we meet 100% of demonstrated need, we're on your team trying to get you as much money as we can to make sure that this is affordable and you can have the college experience. You know, at Dartmouth, we talk about the Dartmouth experience and what that entails, both inside of the classroom and outside. But wherever you go, you're going to have that school's experience, and you want to make sure that you have that. So we're all on a team together trying to make this happen. You know, we're very lucky we meet demonstrated needs. Sometimes some families say, I still can't afford that money that we have in income or savings, we don't want to spend on education. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out, but a lot of times we're able to work with families to come up with a plan. And that plan might be taking out loans, taking money out of savings and then also doing a payment plan and putting everything together along with a scholarship, along with a work experience for your child. So all of us in financial aid, not just at Dartmouth, but our job is to create access. Admissions opens the doors to the college experience. And I love to say that it's our job to keep that door open and make sure that you can walk through it. Okay, let's talk about additional costs. I just want you to know that, you know, all the places you'll go, this is Morocco, a picture of Morocco. Dr. Seuss went to Dartmouth, so he gets a lot of publicity. And off-campus programs, though. We have 54 off-campus programs. You name it, I think we go there. It is incredible, and the experiences are wonderful. At this point at Dartmouth, we cover 50% of the price increase. For example, a student from San Francisco flying to Boston, it's going to be less expensive than a student in San Francisco flying to Rome for our intensive Italian program or our art history program. And so at this point, we're covering 50% of the increase with scholarship, and we offer a loan for the other 50%. I think we're within a year away to be able, with our capital campaign, we're at $12 million for this initiative of off-campus programs being the same cost to study in Hanover as the same cost around the world. So we'll do more than the 50%. We'll do 100%, and I'm really excited about that. We have to get to 15 million. So if you win Powerball, you might want to finish off this initiative for us. We're really excited about it.
Dino,
I highlighted.
Dino, I think you could win it. I know you have that lucky touch. But
Right.
one question somebody asked, because like as you're mentioning, Dartmouth, out of state school, like many of the other colleges, we hear a lot in California, in-state tuition. So can you demystify all this, how there's this out-of-state tuition assistance for families who demonstrate need? Because that may be a confusing process for families who've not heard of how out-of-state colleges will give money and the difference between a private school giving money versus a public school that's out-of-state giving money.
I think it's really important to do the calculators of many different schools, many types of schools, sizes of schools. I think it's important to take a look and you will see, I know that a very low income student will have a better award at Dartmouth or our peer schools than many state institutions in California. And I know that just because we meet with the students when they're admitted, and we look and we're able to recruit many students. And I say that's why it's really important to look at the calculators and know that I have a slide a little bit later on that talks about, okay, you may see that we're $75,000. And for students that don't have need, we will be $75,000. But every type of school can be different and has aid to give out. And private schools tend to give out more aid than public schools. And that's where I always say the sticker price may not be your price. And that's why looking at schools and not being scared away, like, okay, I know that Berkeley will cost $32,000 roughly, all in with tuition, room, and board. I know that we're going to be $75,000, and I know that's a huge difference. Students who are qualifying for aid, and it could be a merit award at another school. Again, we don't give out merit, but it could be a merit award at a school in New York City or in the Midwest or wherever. That's going to make the school. It's going to be more comparable, maybe more than 32,000, but it's maybe not going to be a $40,000 difference between schools. And so I think it's really important to start looking at all of your options wherever you want to look, whether it's in-state, out-of-state. I always encourage people to take a look and don't get scared away just by the sticker price. So the additional costs, off-campus programs, medical insurance. Most states require medical insurance, and sometimes at Dartmouth we offer scholarships for students on aid for medical insurance. And but there are different, I say off-campus programs and I say internships. Maybe you have an unpaid internship or non-enrollment periods where are there different costs that you want to go volunteer at a nonprofit organization and they don't have funding for you. So just know that there are other things that will come up cost-wise, and some schools are able to handle that. Other schools, they'll say that you're on your own. I mean, I'm very excited about our internship and off-term experiences and fellowship funds that we have. But not all schools have that. So it's really worth checking that out. If I get in and I want to go do these things at this school in Washington, D.C., how can I live in Washington, D.C. and still have these experiences during the summer, let's say? And what is your school offering? And it's worth asking these places now just to try to figure things out. Okay, I'm almost done here. So I just want to show you some more of your homework here. The government has a college cost, the College Affordability and Transparency Center. You see these three things: Navigator, Scorecard, and the Net Price Calculator. So these are a little bit older, these websites. The data is still new, but they're getting refreshed by the government. You can go to this website and get to any net price calculator that colleges have. So if you don't want to go hunt on college websites for it, you can go to this website, click on a school and type in and type in Dartmouth, and you would get taken to our net price calculator. But on this is also the college scorecard and navigator, and it will talk about on these, it will talk about debt. It will talk about retention rates. And on the navigator here, you see Dartmouth. Every school has one of these that has federal funds. Our student to faculty ratio is 7:1. You can see that we're considered remote. Our student population is 6,500, but only 4,400 are undergrads. But what it does have in here is retention and graduation rates. Sometimes I get worried when I see schools that have retention rates of 50, 55%. And I think that's important to know before you go to college. Why, after year one, are so few students continuing on to year two? They're transferring or they're dropping out. This is a perfect time to get that information and ask the college. Your retention rate is 62%. Why are only 6 out of 10 people coming back the second year? Where are they going? What's happening? And you can learn a lot about a school. You can also learn a lot about graduation rates and how many people are graduating in 4 years? How many people are graduating in 6 years? There are some colleges that really struggle graduating people in 4 years because they can't get the right courses sometimes. And we see that. I saw that when I was at the medical school. There were many places that you couldn't get the prerequisites to medical school at some colleges ahead of time. So that caused people to stay enrolled longer. And their college experience had more terms, and it was a little bit more costly. All of these are really important questions to ask ahead of time. If you're going to a more urban place, you might want to learn about campus security. Maybe a cohort default rate, learning how many people are defaulting on student loans if that's something that interests you. So I encourage you to take a look at the navigator, and you'll get a lot of information of the schools. Last thing I really want to just show you is how this all works.
Dino, before you go into that, can I ask a question?
Please.
And one, thank you for highlighting College Navigator. Such a wonderful black and white information.
Really
so cannot emphasize that enough. We have somebody who was listening saying that, they understand you said savings is important. And we do have some younger families here. So welcome families. It's never too early to think about financial aid. So where's the best place for a family to put their savings? Like, is it a 529? Do they put in their child's name? Do they put it in the grandparent's name?
A really good question. That's a really good question. So I'm a big believer in the 529, and you definitely don't want the money in the child's name. You want the money, you want the child as the beneficiary, meaning you're setting up this account for your child to go to college, and it grows tax-free. So, if you put in, let's just say you put in 20,000 and the stock market has been fairly strong, and when all of a sudden it's up at 25,000, you're not paying any tax on your capital gain. You sell those, let's say you sell the investment and you pay the college. If it's in your name on the 529, on the FAFSA, that is your resource. If it's in your, and it's used at a much, in the formula, it's at roughly 5% it's used. So essentially, if you have $100 in your name, $5 is expected as a parent, to go to your college costs, okay? If it's in the child's name, 20% is expected to go to the college costs. So I would encourage you to not have it in your child's name, and have it as in your name, and the beneficiary being your child. If you have more than one child, the great thing about a 529 is you can also, or it doesn't have to be another child, it could be a niece or a nephew. You can transfer the money and change beneficiaries, and know that you can still use it for college costs. If you if your son or daughter, let's say, gets a full scholarship somewhere, you still, it's not like you're going to lose that money or be taxed on that money unless you take it out for non-educational expenses. You can always move it around. You bring up grandparents, and I think that's really interesting because on the FAFSA, it's going to ask you different questions. And if you're getting help from other places, that's technically untaxed income that you would report both on the FAFSA and the profile. So I like to always say it's really easy to keep it in your name. Everything is, you'll know everything's there. If you're putting in a grandparent name, then you're putting that they're supporting you and it's untaxed at that point. So it gets a little bit more complicated. Great question. I just want to show you really quickly the cost of attendance. And this is a sample. This isn't a Dartmouth. I just came up with numbers. 67,530 in this example is the cost of attendance. This is the expenses that you'll have, that your son or daughter may have going to college. And so you'll see 67,530. And let's just say I came up with a very large scholarship, 56,530. The net cost is 11,000. I highlighted net cost in green for you, just so you know. This is a really important concept for you, everybody. And I say this because it's really important when you're comparing schools, especially if you're comparing, let's say, a private, a public in-state school with a private school in-state, but also a private school across the country. It's important to know what the net cost is. How much is this going to cost our family? And notice I only have scholarships up there. I don't have work. I don't have loans up there. And I don't have that because if you take out a loan, you need to repay it. So you can't put that in net cost. If you have a job, you have to work to get your biweekly paycheck if you're a student. If you don't work, you don't get the money. So that's why in this example, the net cost is 11,000. That's what it's going to cost the family. But let's just say we have a parent contribution of 2,000. We have a student contribution of 3,000. Maybe the student said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to work this summer before college and I'm going to come up with $3,000. Might be a little bit high, but this parent said, I can afford 2,000. Work over a term, I'm going to earn $3,000. That's not in a term, that's in a year. I'm going to earn $1,500 a semester. That's doable. And that 3,000 is going to go towards the net cost. And now we put in a loan because a student might say, I need a loan to help. Well, remember that earlier slide when I talked about you're going to possibly use a lot of different resources to pay for college. This is using a scholarship. The scholarship could be partially funded by the federal government, maybe the state government, depending where you are, and the college, let's say. You have a parent contribution that could come from savings or a monthly payment plan from your current earnings. A student contribution is, let's say that's as I said, the summer work ahead of going to college. You have your hourly job while you're in college, $1,500 a semester. And then you need $3,000. There's a loan there for you. You've used so many different resources to pay that $11,000 in this example. So your homework is the net price calculator. Go check things out. Check out the navigator, look for outside scholarships, start looking at actual scholarships from colleges. What's it based on? Is it merit? Is it need? Let's see what's out there and what's it based on. If you say, wow, I have a good chance at different merit awards, that might put you saying, I'm going to look at this school because I can get a presidential scholarship or I can get a dean's scholarship. And you might say, I have a good shot for that, and start figuring out where you're going to have a good shot at different merit awards. All right, let's fire away with questions. There's a class of 22. Class of 24 did not get a group picture because of COVID, unfortunately. Hopefully soon. Let me say it that way, hopefully soon.
So, Dino, thank you so much. And you actually made some of our families already do some net price calculators during your presentation. Love those multitasking families. And one of them put a Bucknell out there because Bucknell advertised they don't use EFC, which is that formula the FAFSA only schools do. So can you talk about when colleges say we don't use EFC methodology versus sometimes that language institutional methodology? What does that mean? Is that good or is it bad?
So that's really, let me just tell you, all of these questions are amazing, everybody. You're like, this is phenomenal. So the EFC, the estimated family contribution, I want to say with the bill that just passed Congress in late December, talks about how the federal formula is going to be changing in a couple of years, and that terminology is going to go away for 23-24. But when Bucknell says they don't use the EFC, that means they're using their own institutional formula. So chances are you'll be filling out the CSS profile there, and that's the form that goes a little bit more in depth, and that allows colleges to use their own formula, institutional methodology. What is Bucknell's formula? Remember, the federal formula, it doesn't really go that far in depth. So the federal formula doesn't look at if they're divorced parents, it's only looking at the custodial parent. Well, most institutional methodologies and needs analysis are going to look at, as I said, both parents. Even if they're remarried, they'll probably break out, if they can, the financials. And so it goes a little bit in depth. The federal formula doesn't look at property. It looks at investment property. It doesn't look at your home. And most schools that will have used their own schools methodology will look at assets, and an asset would be your home also. And that's where the cost of living adjustment comes in, because in San Francisco, homes are so expensive.
Yes. Yeah, and that question came up a few times. So yeah, so it's a big concern for us Bay Area families. Another one goes, I'm preparing for retirement, prefer not to have to delay to pay for college. Are parents' ages considered for aid? And I know you have a good answer.
So that's we do get this question a lot. You'll be filling out the forms, and if someone's retiring, they're going to have income that they're living on. And someone can say, well, I'm going to retire and I'm going to have my retirement income. And as I said, retirement accounts don't show up on the forms. So if you have a 403B or 401k and you have $1.5 million on there, that's not going to show up. What's going to show up is what you're actually living on. So if you're getting a distribution of $10,000 a month for easy math, and you're living on $120,000, that's what's going to show up on the forms. But we're not going to look at age. We're not going to look at the age of a parent. We're going to look at the financials of the parent. But if the income goes down and you're using distributions to live on, we would use that.
Thank you. And then the next question is, if you have a child that has a part-time job, love it when kids work, builds great character, make all my kids do it. Does this get calculated into the FAFSA calculation? And how does that vary if there's a school like Dartmouth that requires FAFSA and the CSS profile?
So that would show up, income would show up on the FAFSA. So remember, if it's a senior this year, it's going back 2 years. We are, you mentioned a school like Dartmouth. I say that because we have an expectation that you will work. When you're not in school, we have leave term earnings, just like all our peer schools. And we want people to do we want them to work. And I was just thinking out loud or thinking in my mind here that we're going to ask people who are making under 100,000. We want them to earn $1,000. If you make over 100,000 as a family, we want you to earn 2,000, essentially during a summer break or a leave term, if depending on the calendar when you take it. So we're going to want to see it. The FAFSA will pick that up, but we're expecting to see it because so it wouldn't hurt you at a school like us, but we would see it. Other schools, it would be there, but unless students are earning a ton. But at that point, if a student has earned $7,000 or $8,000 in a year, which is incredible, that would be awesome. We have seen that sometimes in some family situations where we can use professional judgment and to say, okay, we know they made $7,000 or $8,000, but now they're coming to college and they're not going to be able to earn that much, and we may be able to make some changes. One thing that I didn't cover that I really want to talk about is communication with the school. I just realized I must have taken that slide out when I was playing around with it. COVID is changing everything. And I mentioned this earlier, Anna Maria mentioned the question about demonstrated schools that meet demonstrated need and the effect of this pandemic. The effects of the pandemic are incredible and they haven't stopped. I talked about the job loss. We have families that are using this year 2018 tax returns. I told you 2019 seemed like 10 years ago. 2018 seems like 30 years ago. A family that's making $180,000 in 2018, they could be making literally nothing now other than the enhanced unemployment. And so you have to communicate with the schools. If something on 2019 and you're affected by COVID and you're applying to schools and you haven't made it back in another year, let's say you're applying, and we're using 2019 or 2020 income, and you're like, I only worked for 9 months in 2020, and now it's been really slim pickings for a while, you need to tell schools that, because we've been using estimated year for families. We've been, instead of using 19 income or 18 income, we've been going to 20 income. We're doing what we can to make this as easy as possible in one of the toughest pandemics, not toughest pandemic, it's been a very tough situation. When we, in 2008, it never happened like it has happened to this year overnight. When we had the stock market and we had the economic downturn in 2008, we saw different industries go over time. This was starting literally March 6th, we started having some idea maybe something was coming. And by I think it was March 16th, we were already making plans to go remote. And all the phone calls before that were just starting as the pandemic came across the country. So I say that because it all happened at once. I had a full head of hair on March 16th, and it's been a really challenging time. I'm saying all this because the expectation is if you've been impacted, you need to communicate with the schools. And because we're using 19 income next year, and because we're using, if you're a junior, remember, 2020 income, it may not look like what's really happening for you if you haven't fully recovered by that time.
Dino, thank you for emphasizing that, because we, Ashley and myself, know that we have so many of our families impacted, and you still look beautiful with a set of hair or not. So just remember that. You got some tough questions ahead. So
okay.
For our divorce or multiple household families, so they heard you say that the net price calculator doesn't really work well when you have two households. So how should they handle this situation? Because so they could still be knowledgeable and have that balanced college list with a great list of affordable colleges.
It's really tough because the formula doesn't know exactly what is the calculator isn't. They don't program that well in terms of when you are a divorced family and there's two separate incomes, there's two separate allowances because there's two separate households. So it's not like you can, if the families get along, it's not like you can just add your income together and put it in the calculator and get the right answer, because it actually will give you a lower answer than what it would be, because we have different allowances for families. Essentially, you have two homes, so you have to have two living allowances. So it's very difficult on the divorce side. We're always working on trying to get the calculators set. I think that's something that calling the school, saying how to handle it, many times it's filling out a form, and a school can try to help go through it with you. I know we would do that at Dartmouth. But it is difficult for in that situation.
Yeah, and being one of those families, start early and do it. But the financial aid officers have always been so gracious. You just got to work with your partner in crime. Here's another one. If we have a rental home, but it has a mortgage on it, the rent pays for the mortgage and taxes, what amount do we put on FAFSA? And then would it be the value of the house less than the mortgage loan amount? For example, if it's 900,000 K and the loan is 550, then does the asset amount listed on FAFSA is 350,000?
Yes, it's the home equity of the investment. So, and remember that was the investment property, which is great, and the home, your home is not listed on the FAFSA, only rental or investment property.
Okay.
So it would be home equity or rental equity, the equity in the home.
Great, great. And then just a reminder for families that if it's a school that just needs FAFSA, they don't look at your home. Only
Correct.
if you have additional ones, right? But CSS
Correct.
profile will look at everything, which is good because, right, medical expenses, CSS profile schools will ask for, while FAFSA won't, right? So they'll look at.
Sure, it'll even, I mean, it asks a lot of questions. And one thing I want to highlight is, you're paying tuition to St. Ignatius. That's on the form, paying for private school. Like, it really goes into depth trying to look at your expenses. And that's another allowance that we'll look at. So a private secondary school. So
great. And then just to let everyone know, Dino, though on Zoom, it's 10:33 his time. So we're going to ask one last question, but we have been gracious to have Dino for 2 years, but also, help us as counselors too, because this is a great question. So except for the financial aid homework that you gave all our families, thank you.
Yep.
What's the first step? What's step number one that
that's
everyone
really good.
needs to do?
That's really, really, really good question. So first of all, the first step that I would do, and I actually did with both my daughters, a first year and a third year in college. So I made them come up with a calendar because that calendar had to be with, and it was not just a financial aid calendar, it was an admissions financial aid calendar. It was coming up with what are the deadlines and going backwards. So for example, if the FAFSA deadline for a college is this date, and having them fill out all the deadlines, all the requirements that are due, and doing that for admissions too, and then going backwards saying, okay, if the deadline is here for, it's January 1, let's just say for this, for a college, when do I need to start it, and put it on the calendar, because it's so easy through this process to sort of just push things off. And the college counselors are going to be, you guys are all amazing. The parents are on top of things, but the students really need to take ownership of this, because they're going to be the ones who have the portals for the college. They may give you a password, but for a college portal, or admissions portal or financial aid. But I really, really think that's step one, and start investigating the schools, and it will make for it when it's laid out. And if there are students listening to this Zoom, just know the deadlines are so important, and you can't wait till the night before to ask people for recommendations or to fill out different forms, because it's a process that's not great to do in 24 hours.
Thank you so much, Dino, for
Oh
this
my gosh, this is great. I'm telling you, next year, I really, everybody, I want to be in San Francisco, and I want to be walking around crazy and eating some really good food. So I hope it works out.
Well, we absolutely look forward to seeing you physically in person next
Life is
year.
good.
Thank you again for taking the time to talk to our SI community and families. And thank you to our families for joining us. We truly hope that this was informative